Thank you so much for joining TC alum, students, faculty, staff. This is the TC Community Engagement Team's first session for 2024 on the election to get ready to vote. We're so happy to have Jacelyn Matthews, a proud TC alum, guiding us today on how to get ready for the election to unlock your political potential and make a difference in your community. Jacelyn.
Hello, hello. Thank you again for having me and giving me the ability to share about what we're calling Ignite the Vote here at Ignite National. So I'll go ahead and get started and just give you a background about Ignite and what we do. So we're a movement of young women who are ready and eager to become the next generation of political leaders. We're the largest young women's political organization in the country. We've trained about 30,000 young women across the country on being civically engaged. If they're wanting to run for elected office, we assist them with that as well. But we're really just trying to get them to hone their skills on being leaders, political leaders, etc. So we do focus in on Gen Z. That's our demographic. That's our niche area. And so some of this might kind of feel, as I'm talking, might feel kind of rudimentary, but I also want to make sure that you had an idea of what we do and how we actually present this information to young individuals. So if you're a teacher or an administrator or working with youth in some capacity, you get a taste of how we actually go about doing this to engage them in the political process. So what is Ignite the Vote? ITV is what we call it, is a campaign to mobilize and register first-time voters across America that's rooted in voter education, voter mobilization, and a digital strategy. A lot of what we do is more digital focused because we know that that's where people are. We want to meet them where they are and to make sure that the information is getting to those who might not readily have access to the information. So as we're talking today, we'll talk about the history of voting. What are the primaries, especially now that we're going into a very large presidential election, our call to action, so how to ITV this primary season, and then other ways to get involved this election season as well. So just some history on US voting history. Here's a timeline of what it has taken for us to get to the point of having access to voting, having voting rights. So we see from 1776 to 1965. And even though we talk about the Voting Rights Act becoming law, we also have seen how things have been repealed or states are trying to repeal and ice people out from having access to voting, whether that be not giving them the opportunity to vote, making polling places far from their homes, making it difficult and cutting off the times that people can go to vote so they're not able to go after school, after work, etc. Just making it very difficult for people to exercise the vote that we have worked so hard to actually get. So in response to the 5-4 decision and the 2013 Shelby County versus Holder case, Chief Justice John Roberts said the Voting Rights Act was based on decades-old data and eradicated practices such as literacy tests that they have banned nationwide for over 40 years. Once again, going back to, yes, that they did say we're going to get rid of these literacy tests and other things that banned access to voting, but we've seen how they have been trying to reinstate some things to keep people from voting as well. So we know that it's a targeted effort to enforce structural racism. So since the Supreme Court's decision, states and localities have brazenly pushed forward discriminatory changes to voting practices. So we've seen this. I know my parents are moved from New Jersey to Savannah, Georgia recently, excited about going out to vote. But my parents are elderly, and so we're going out to vote, and they were telling them like, no, you came at the wrong time. We need you to wait in this really, really ridiculously long line so that you can actually go out and, and vote. And my parents were doing early voting, and they made it incredibly difficult. It was hot, and it was a long line, like I said, no access to food, water, etc. So a lot of people were turning away. Like, I don't have time to wait here. I have other things to do. Or there's other like disabilities that kept them from actually being able to, stand online, or there's misinformation. There was some person who represented themselves as being a poll worker and said you have to stand on X line. So people lined up over there, and then come to find out a real poll worker came out and said, why y'all standing over there? You've been over there for an hour or two. You're supposed to be over here. So imagine someone who has take an opportunity to show up to the poll. Imagine for a first-time voter, they're excited, and then they've been standing on this really long line. They finally get to what they think is supposed to be the front, and then they're being told, nope, actually, you've been in the wrong line this whole time. So we're seeing other ways that they're disenfranchising people from having access to vote. And so how do we actually make sure that people know about voting, can show up to not just registering to vote, but also having a plan to vote and showing up to the polls? So our goal here with Ignite and ITV is to challenge those who seek to restrict us from making our voices heard in our democracy. Like I said, our focus is Gen Z, young women or women identifying folk. We know that there have been major issues when it comes to repro justice, mental health, things of that nature, the book bans and don't say gay bills and all these other ways in which they're being impacted. But still feeling like I want to make my voice heard. I want to show up to the polls. I want to be, a part of this process, but feeling at many times like disengaged and not really wanting to do so because there's so many laws that are being passed that are kind of like going against them. So we're trying to find ways to reignite their fervor for wanting to be a part of the process, wanting to show up to the polls, how to have conversations with their friends, their colleagues, their loved ones about voting as well. So your vote is power. We want to remind people of that. There are a lot happening in our country. People are disenchanted with the political process, don't want to vote, believe that those in power are trying to stay in power. How do we get them out? And also they're like, well, my vote doesn't actually really matter because things are happening, decisions are being made that go against my best interest. And even though in the past we've gone out to vote, we're not seeing change happen. So we've been talking about, yes, it's important for you to vote. Yes, your voice still matters. Also, how do we engage you in other ways? So it might be that there's not an actual candidate or elected official that you're backing, but it might be some really important issues and platforms that they're talking about and that they're demonstrating so that you can feel like I can align with someone based off of these particular values. So we're trying to talk about those things as well because it's incredibly important. How do we get people to say, I want to show up? If you're saying like, I don't feel like my voice is heard. So discussion, why is your vote important to you? Why does voting matter to you?
And this is a question for folks in the room. Welcome, Cassandra. Good to see you again.
Very much. It's great. I jumped into a really great presentation. Thank you. I am incredibly passionate. Just on the background, I'm a physician. Whenever I see patients around voting days, I end up my interaction with them. Are you registered? I don't care who you vote for. I just want to know, are you registered? And if it's on voting days and they come to see me, I want to know, have they already been or are they going? And I just think whenever I can, I try to encourage folks to, one, get registered, and two, to go vote any of my interaction. And it's important because that's the only way we get to say what we think. And otherwise we get to deal with whatever is given to us and we don't have any input. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that. It's your voice, your voice matters, like you were saying, and we all have different experiences and different perspectives, and so it matters to be able to voice those experiences and opinions, so that it's heard, known, acknowledged, right? If nobody knows, then what can people really do about it? So that's really how I feel.
Thank you. Anyone else? Why is voting important to you?
I think it's hard. It's hard for me when I listen to, I don't know what Gen X's or whatever it is. I mean, 20, 30-year-olds who are angry having gone out and, stood in line and did all they could do the last time, and they don't feel as though anything has changed. And I think it's just, it's a struggle. And I think we just have to help people understand it doesn't change overnight. And, people, you look at the civil rights era, it looks like it all happened in the 60s, but I mean, my God, that was 100 years worth of stuff to get to the 60s. So it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen over a 4-year period. And I just keep encouraging folks to at least go register. If you go register and then you decide not to go vote, at least that's a conscious decision. But if you don't go register when it comes time to vote, you can't do anything.
Right. Thank you for saying that. And so we at Ignite, we do work with Gen Zers. So we're hearing these conversations every day about them not being excited about voting. What does my vote actually matter? Does it count for anything? And so we've been talking to them, like I was saying before, about what are some issues that you're really passionate about. And also talking to them about, like, you know, politics is local, right? So what is going to impact you more immediately is what's happening in your local community. So school board, city council, your mayor, et cetera, like those things are going to impact you immediately. And so if we're looking to federal government to be the only ways in which change happens, we're going to be frustrated. So it does take a very long time, but we can see change happen immediately within our local community, because you can go to a school board meeting, you go to city council meeting, and you can see these people in your neighborhood and talking about the, you know, these things are impacting me in my school, these things are impacting me in my community. What are you going to do about it? And so we encourage our young people to even go to those meetings, to go to a school board, to make your voice known in those spaces, get your face out there as well, so that they, when they see you show up, they know, okay,
That's a great idea.
business.
Great point.
And so we're trying to find ways to get them more excited. But I say that because obviously I work with Gen Z every day. Like, that's just what we do. But I say it to everyone I encounter, because I hear even, you know, older adults, more seasoned, I like to say more seasoned adults, talking about, like, this doesn't matter, right? We see it on social media every day. People talking about, this doesn't matter, my voice doesn't matter. Okay, but it does. And let's find other ways that you can get involved and engaged. And one is being registered to vote. And two, holding our electeds accountable. Like, that's huge, right? We can't just vote and then that's be it. There's our civic duty doesn't just stop there. Anybody else want to share about why they feel voting is important to them before we move on? Okay. Okay, so just talking about the primaries, what are they? Why they matter? So political parties use primaries and caucuses to determine which candidates will run for their state's partisan offices in the November 5th, 2024 general election. So some of those, yes, we're, you know, electing a president, but also there might be other things that are going up for a vote. So it might be state reps, your state senators, things of that nature. Some people, there might be mayoral primaries, there might be senator, et cetera. So just being aware of what's coming up in the primary in your local city and state. Several seats are up for grabs, including the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, state leg, US Congress, and president. Even judges are up, and most people do not consider that when they're going out to vote. And for the primaries as well, is that we are voting in our judges. So it's important that we know if that's up for election, also what is their platform, what has been their voting history, and also not voting history, but also like how they've actually decided certain cases. Those things are very key. Sometimes people go in and they vote down a line, right? This is like, this name is familiar, this is who I know, or I'm a Dem, so I'm going to vote down the line. But also we need to be very informed voters when we're going into the polling places as well. So there's different types of primaries also, and it's important for you to know what your state offers when it comes to types of primaries. So there can be an open primary, and that means that a voter of any political affiliation may vote in the primary of any party. In a closed primary, voters may only vote in the primary of the party they are registered with. So it's important that if you're registered to vote, that you are outlining what party you're affiliated with, in case your state does have a closed primary. A semi-closed primary, so independent voters or those without a party affiliation may choose which party's primary they want to vote in. And then the presidential preference primary, so voting to indicate your preference for who your particular candidate will be for your party's nominee for the presidency. And those things are important to know as well. So check your state here. So one, what type of primary election does your state have? Important for you to know if it's open, if it's closed, semi, and if there's a presidential preference primary. And then when is your state's primary election? So we have it, and I'll make sure that I link it in the chat so that you're able to go to our website. So information about when your state primary election is up. Also, information about how to register to vote, absentee ballot requests, things of all that nature is on our website, all in one place. Also to check your registration status. So if you have moved, so I had to do this when I moved. I moved twice since I moved to the Maryland area. You want to check to make sure that it's updated, and you might assume certain things are updated, but maybe it didn't, or because I moved within the same city, but things had changed, or within the same county, I'm sorry, but there were some changes as well. So you want to make sure all your information is up to date. So you want to be able to check your status. So here's a list of primaries taking place next month. And I'm listing them all here. So these are all in March. Super Tuesday is March 5th. That's a lot of states who have their primaries taking place. So just want to kind of like make sure you're taking stock of, is your primary coming up within the next month or so? Also, if your primary is coming up, that means that voter registration is probably happening by the end of this month as well. So you want to go and check your status, make sure you are registered to vote. So if you are wanting to participate in the primary, you're able to do so.
And Jacelyn, would you be able to add that link in the chat?
Yes, I will.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So that information is there about check your state, also checking your registration status, and registering to vote if you so choose as well. So absentee voting, I know that we have some people who may be registered in, living in one state but registered in another, particularly those who are saying, I want to stay registered in my home state simply because it's a swing state. And they're like, my vote matters in that state. And so, or there's a great need for my vote in that state. And so for those, just want to make sure that you know, so it's a way for you to cast your ballot in an election without voting in person at a polling place. A lot more states adopted these rules for vote by mail, some people call it, or absentee ballots, particularly during COVID. So states that didn't really have a ready set rule did create rules and laws about absentee ballots since COVID. So, and also you want to make sure your state doesn't have an excuse, doesn't have it so that there needs to be an absentee ballot with or without an excuse or reason. And if there is that, you want to make sure you know that ahead of time so that if you're not able to vote in person and you do need to request an absentee ballot, you know if there needs to be an excuse or a reason so that you can get that handled beforehand. Okay, so first thing, ensure you're registered to vote and check your state's voting options. See if it offers all mail voting, no excuse absentee voting, or absentee voting with an excuse. Once that's confirmed, you can request your absentee ballot. If your state only permits voting by absentee ballot with a qualifying excuse, then you must see if you qualify before requesting an absentee ballot, which I mentioned. There are 16 states that do have such rules, so you want to see what your state rule is before you request. And examples of qualifying excuses for states that require a reason to vote might be you'll be out of the county on election day, you're hospitalized, or you have a disability that keeps you from going to the polls yourself. And also check your state's deadlines for absentee ballot requests for the upcoming primaries, as many are coming up within the next month or so. So for example, Georgia's presidential preference primary takes place March 12th. So absentee ballots must be requested by March 1st. So you do want to check that if there is a primary that you would like to vote in, you want to make sure that you know when the deadline is to register so that you will have or request an absentee ballot so that you'll have that information ahead of time so that you can vote on time. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I guess, and to be clear, Ignite is doing, everything Teachers College is doing is nonpartisan. We have folks who might be registered in a home state in Midwest, for example. But they live in New York and they're becoming, starting to have a New York identity. They're crossing at streetlights, even if it doesn't say to cross, that type of thing. And we're wondering what you would advise to someone who's in that kind of situation.
So adopting or assimilating to a New York or wherever state you are, the culture there, and where do you happen to vote? Is that your question?
Yeah. If it's equally as easy or difficult to register in New York rather than their home state.
First of all, they should start crossing that crosswalk.
Yeah, right. What should they just absentee vote back home or register in New York?
So I would also say about what makes sense for you and where do you feel more closely aligned. So if you know that there's a particular person that is running for an office that you want to, one, make sure that you're supporting them, or two, like you're adamantly opposing them, and it makes sense for you to register and actually vote in that election, I would encourage you to do so. But if you feel like I'm more closely aligned to what's happening in my local community, I know that people running for office, this is going to impact me more directly, as I was mentioning before, because they are running for city council, school board, et cetera. And I'm really passionate about these things, and I want to make sure the right person is in office, because I want to be more involved. Then yes, I would say, register to vote for where you currently are living. But I know that there are some people who are kind of like in limbo, or might be a student at TC, but also be from another home state and they want to register there. So we just kind of like, I would say what makes the most sense for where you are right now. If you're really involved in local politics, that's something that really matters to you, register where you are. But if there's something that's happening back home that you're really wanting to be a part of that process, I would say register there.
That's great. So it sounds like they should do a little homework to find out what are the issues back home, who are the candidates back home, where is their heart, like, and what impact can they make in their community back home versus New York. That's super helpful. Other questions folks have on absentee voting?
And I just want to say, I always encourage people to be very informed voters, whether it is that you're voting locally, whether it is that you're voting back home. Once again, we're not voting blindly. We are wanting to have a plan because we care about what's happening in our local and our federal government. So yes, so doing the research, figuring what's really happening, even like there's like these if you ever notice and on your ballot, sometimes there's like these questions, right, that they want you to vote on. And most of us don't pay attention to these questions. We don't really think about how it's going to impact my day to day. But those things are incredibly important too. So you want to know, like, for example, in Jersey, we had something about if they should make it legal for, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to try my hardest, for student athletes to get paid. It was something to that effect, right? And most people kind of like just bypassed it, right? And not thinking about like, what's going to be the impact on their taxes? What's going to be the impact on the student? Like thinking about the grander kind of like idea of it, and either didn't make a decision at all, or just kind of like checked a box and not really thinking about the overall, issue. So I do encourage people to ask for even like a sample ballot, so you know what's going to be on the ballot. So when you show up to the poll, you're aware, right? You're not like, oh, I didn't realize this question was going to be on there, and you're trying to figure it out.
Where do you get sample ballots?
So you can, when you register to vote, they should be sending it to you in your local community. If you're not getting it, you can go to your election department or polling or voting department in your city, state, county, and you can request it from there too. They might even have it on the website to make it easier as well.
Got it. Thanks.
And I believe Ballotpedia also does have the sample ballots on their website for each county. Okay, so now what? We've talked about a lot of things. What's our call to action? Where do we go from here? So one, register to vote. So check your voter registration. Here, I'm going to put that in the chat like I mentioned. Two, spread the word. Make sure your friends, your colleagues, and your family are registered to vote. Be an ITB ambassador. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. And make sure people are not only registered, but have a plan to get to the polls. A lot of organizations are so focused on their numbers in terms of how many people they registered, but then you register people and nobody actually shows up on election day. So then what, right? Great, we got all these people excited about registering. This is awesome, helps our bottom line in terms of numbers, right? But then we have a small percentage actually showing up to the polls. And the goal is registration, but also how do we get people to show up and actually vote?
Was about for a while that Uber or Lyft was actually giving free rides for people to the polls. Is that out there that people know about that?
So I don't think as many people know about it as they should, and thank you for mentioning that. I'm not sure if Lyft and Uber are offering that again this year, but that is a great way. And we talk about having a voting plan, because if you are in a city or state that's making it incredibly difficult for you to register, or for you to actually go and vote, how do we get people there? So once again, it's not just about registering them, but if it is that you live several miles away and you can't get there, how do we get you there? So that you can actually show up. So it is talking to people about what's your actual plan to vote. Do you need assistance? Do we need to like charter a bus, or do we need to have like, you know, a group of people walking together because it's after, you know, after dark. They don't want to walk to their polling place alone. How do we get people to feel safe when they're going to? How do we get people to let go? And if there is going to be a very long line, because there's one polling place within a certain radius, are we, you know, providing water and food or snacks so that people don't leave? So things like that too, as we're talking about.
Are we able to do that? Wasn't that part of the issue that people, I guess it was in Georgia or somewhere, that you couldn't give water and snacks to folks standing in line? Is that
Yeah,
all over the country or just in certain states?
it's in certain states. Like those states, once again, are trying to make it incredibly difficult for people to vote. So Georgia wasn't a place where they weren't allowing it, but there are places where they do. And the last thing on this one is becoming a poll worker. We need to see more diversity and like who is actually the people that are working at our polling places. And some places and cities or states do pay. If it's a paid opportunity, great. You know, you can be there and you can get people, you know, to make sure they're having a very smooth and easy experience when they are going to the polls. So I'll just talk about poll workers a little bit more. So they serve as the front line of America's democracy. They ensure we have secure and accurate elections by being the face of the election office during voting. So some tasks may include set up and prep polling, set up and prep the polling location, welcoming voters into the space, verifying voter registration, and issuing ballots. And then our National Poll Worker Recruitment Day is August 1st, 2024. So that's when you can actually, you can apply now, but you can actually apply on that day as well. So we want to make sure people are trained and ready to go for the election. And once again, a lot of these places do offer payment. And so if you have young people that you know are looking for a little side hustle, this might be something great for them, right? To get them to see this in action, and also a way to get them to get some money.
Is August 1st the last day, or because I know you say we can register now. I mean, we can
yeah, so August
up
1st
now
yes, August 1st is the last day to get people registered, and like it's the huge push to get people to become poll workers.
Okay, thank you.
So once again, you could check your registration status. It's very simple. Let me actually just grab that right quick so that you can have it. I'll put it in the chat if that pops up for me. So this is our website. Like I said, everything is all in one place. So checking your voter registration status, registering to vote, requesting an absentee ballot, all in one place. Also, we have tons of resources. So, you know, how you talk to your family about voting, all those other kind of things. We give a lot of tips and tricks on there as well. So that information is there. We make it very easy for you to check your registration status on there too. It's simply just enter your name, date of birth, your address, email, and then, you know, click, look up your registration. Registering to vote, once again, on the same website, very easy and simple for you to be able to go in there, register to vote, and then make sure you're good to go. And then we have our ITV ambassadors. So Ignite the Vote ambassadors is something that we're doing to make sure that people are getting people registered, having a plan to vote, and actually getting them to the polls. So we have volunteers who will help us mobilize voters, organize drives, and promote ITV messaging. Anyone could be an ITV ambassador. We have a toolkit that makes it easy for you to share, on your social media platforms. Also, if you want to host registration parties, things of that nature, we have it so that it's easy for you to set that up. If you want to be able to talk to people or teach them or train them about voting, we have the slide deck template for people to use as well. Trying to make it as easy as possible for people to be an ambassador and to be able to share this information. So the opportunity to win prizes, gain access to a network of other civically engaged young women and non-binary folks. And then also, if you are trained as an ITV ambassador, you are able to earn a LinkedIn certification / micro credential for being an ambassador as well. And that's it. So if there are any questions, I'll pause, answer any questions you might have, other things you might want to discuss about voting as well that I didn't cover. Love for us to dialogue.
It was an excellent, excellent presentation. Thank you.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Jacelyn. Curious about, Teachers College really well, and here we have students and alum together, and wondering, what you would envision for something for the TC community. Things like this, the discussions are really essential, and the information you shared. Maybe something online we could do together, something in person we could do together in the coming months.
Yeah, I would be excited to partner with you on how we can actually get this information to even more people. I know it's not easy for everybody to hop on Zoom, especially during the workday, or the school day. So how do we make sure people know about this and can share it more widely? So there's opportunities for us to partner in person or virtually, whatever makes sense for the people that you're working with. And there's other opportunities for us to talk more about voting, civic engagement, campaigning. If you're wanting to run for office, we do have an opportunity.
Oh yeah, I know Ignite offers that. If people are so excited that they want to be on the ballot. Ignite has that workshop series that we could talk about, hosting. And so stay tuned. People are watching this in February, March, and in the springtime. We hope that we'll have more collaboration with Ignite. And we have a couple of minutes for any other questions from the audience here.
I'm
sorry,
curious
yeah.
about just we just recently had this sort of I wouldn't say snowstorm, but the snowstorm. Snow came down and interfered with the most recent election we had in New York. And people, I guess the campaign was going around offering folks rides, which brings the question, did everybody get offered the ride, or how do you make sure that it's not biased, that only some people get offered? How do you, I talked about what I heard last time, Lyft and Uber, but how do you make sure that there's fair or equitable access to getting to the polls? I mean, I grew up in Chicago, so with Richard J. Daley, and that was like part of, vote early and often. So they would go out and get people and dead people, all kinds of crazy stuff. But how do you get folks to the polls if it's a legitimate assistance to get them there and making sure everybody has access to that?
So that's what we talk about, having a voting plan. So once again, if you are registering someone to vote, asking them well, how do you plan to get there? What are some obstacles? Knowing also as you're registering them. So this is something that we do if we are going kind of door to door or doing what we call ITV, kind of like mobilization events. We'll try to figure out what's your local polling place based off your address. And based off of that, is that something that's local to you? Can you walk it? Do you have public transportation there? Or is there another way for you to get there? And as I was mentioning before, what are ways that so if we know that there's going to be an obstacle, how do we make sure that we circumvent that and have a plan ahead of time versus waiting to the day of and saying oh my gosh, all these people don't know how they're going to get there. But if we're having the conversations leading up to that point, we know who has a need, and then we can then try to do our best to address the need. And not saying us, meaning us as Ignite as an organization, but like just talking about it in general as people are registering, folks to vote, that we are having those conversations with them about how they're actually going to get there and make a plan with them about that.
And do you have suggestions? I mean, is that something you kind of keep a list of, or how people might access the polls? Or
So I would say we do have some suggestions, and also, once again, it really does kind of depend on what the obstacle is so that we can offer the said suggestion. Because we have talked about, and I even mentioned this earlier, about like if it's an issue of, yes, I can get there, I can walk it, but I don't feel safe because I have to go after work hours and it's dark. So, okay, how can we get a group of people to go together so that you're not alone? So it really is dependent and unique on the individual's need. And then also like, can we work with other local organizations? So if it is an issue of, we have like, a number of seasoned individuals that can't get there because of transportation needs, can we partner with someone or an organization to like, that has a van that can get them there, or things of that nature. So it really is unique to the person and the need.
thank you.
I did have a question on resource in education. So I know I had a question that I wrote down, how to educate about what seats are coming up. And I know that you said a sample ballot is an option, right? To even know who's on it. But then do you have any suggestions for online websites that may help educate about the people that are on the ballot a little bit more quicker?
I will say, are you working with young people on this?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. There are resources. Are they engaging resources? I'm not going to say that. So what we normally do, honestly, is that we have fellows that we work with, and our fellows are with 20 across the country, and they even offer what we call ITV community councils. And they can talk more directly about, based off of the city or the state, who's running for office, what that looks like, and they kind of make more engaging events for younger people to attend. So the information is out there. It's going to take to be very honest, it's usually pretty simple. If you go to Ballotpedia, and I'll drop that in the chat 1 second. It'll tell you, you can put in your information and it should tell you who's running for office in your area. And then from there, there's even a sample ballot lookup on there too. Hold on a second. So based off of, you might have to enter in some information, like if you're looking for a mayor, city council, school board, governor, whatever. And it'll tell you who's running for office where you are locally. And then here's the sample ballot tool as well. And you can type in your information there and then be able to get a sample ballot. If there's something, especially if you have a primary coming up, that they should have a sample ballot ready to go.
Thank you.
And
You're
Eric, we'd love to follow up with you about your work and youth civic engagement too, because there are centers at TC that do that, and I know of other students doing that work I'd love to connect you with. So when we're done recording and everything, we could stay on maybe for a few minutes.
Okay, that's fine. It's pretty informal, but I do want to increase my engagement in, education, because again, I hear all the time, my vote doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter, but again, it does take a while, so we may not see it, but there's an effect over time and generations, so we gotta, speak up.
Yeah. And I've had like fellows even like make it like a game. So they're presenting the information, they're having the people go and actually look up info and bring it back to the larger group. What'd you find out about that candidate? What'd you like, what you didn't like? So that they're engaged and like they're doing it with you in the same time frame, and then sharing out. So then they can talk about like, I like this, I didn't like that about this candidate. And then the other people are chiming in. Oh, actually, this candidate is doing this, and I like that about that candidate. So it gets some talking too. But getting them to do it all together, I think is helpful because they're working in teams and not doing it independently. But you have to find ways, to make it engaging. And so I know Matt has some resources, and of course, we at Ignite are here to help and support as well.
Yeah, I think people at TC will be interested in how to become a fellow, and other things that Ignite has got queued up. If anybody else has anything else, maybe time for one more question and then we could stop recording and wind down.
I missed the fellow. What's a fellow? And quickly, how do you become a fellow?
Sure. So at Ignite, we do have a fellowship program. It is an opportunity for people women identifying folk, I should say, who are interested in wanting to learn more about grassroots and community organizing, civic engagement, really how to like actually get their communities involved in the political process. It's an opportunity for professional development for them as well. So the application, I believe is going out, and I do not work in this department, so I can't give you an exact date, but it's supposed to be coming out within the next month or two. I believe by May that they'll have that information out. So for people, if you want to share it, people who are interested in having this opportunity it's a year-long process that they're able to work very, hand in hand with us, getting support on how to actually do these things within their local community. And it is a paid opportunity for them as well.
Great. Thanks. Well, again, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm glad I jumped in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacelyn. We look forward to working with you, and we'll share out the your presentation with our Take Action mailing list.